Inside the speeding police car racing toward the courthouse, two white prison guards sat, their expressions calm, almost smug. Dawson, 45, occupied the right seat, while Cohen, 42, sat beside him. Both had been summoned to court, accused of assaulting black female inmates at a women's prison. Yet, despite the severity of the charges, they chatted with satisfaction. Dawson smirked. "Who's gonna believe a bunch of black female inmates? The Justice Department always backs us up." Cohen nodded, confident. "Exactly. We just have to show up, go through the motions, and we'll walk out free." But the moment they stepped into the courtroom, their arrogance crumbled. Their faces paled as their eyes landed on the judge presiding over the trial. Seated on the bench was a black woman with a strikingly familiar face. Only now, she wasn't someone they could dismiss. She was Judge Elsie, one of the most powerful judges in the region, despite being just 38. Dawson and Cohen recognized her immediately, but not in this role. Just days ago, in their eyes, she had been someone entirely different. Now, as her piercing gaze locked onto them, fear crawled into their chests. If looks could kill, they would have dropped the second they entered the courtroom. But every moment has a story behind it. Let's rewind 20 years. Before Elsie became a symbol of justice and resilience, she was just a law student harboring a secret. She was deeply in love with a beautiful white classmate named Emery. Their bond defied societal prejudices, thriving in quiet defiance. But their world came crashing down when Emery was falsely accused of stealing a valuable asset. Elsie fought relentlessly to clear her name, but the system crushed her efforts. Emery was convicted and sent to prison. Less than a year later, Elsie received the devastating news. Emery had died under mysterious circumstances behind bars. The helplessness and agony of that loss ignited something inside Elsie. She vowed to rise above her grief, channeling her pain into an unyielding pursuit of justice. From an ordinary student, she transformed into a formidable judge, driven by one goal: uncover the truth behind Emery's death. Years passed, and finally, Elsie found a lead pointing to the prison where Emery had been held, a place hiding unspeakable secrets. At 38, frustrated by the lack of solid evidence to hold the guilty accountable, Elsie made a daring decision. With the help of her trusted black assistant, Marcus, 40, she created a new identity and committed a minor offense, just enough to land herself inside that very prison. Her plan was meticulous. At first, everything went smoothly, but as soon as she stepped inside, reality hit hard. Down a dim corridor, she witnessed something horrifying: a black female inmate being savagely beaten by two guards. Dawson and Cohen. Her heart clenched. Was this what Emery had endured? Fury surged through her. "Stop," she shouted. "How dare you treat inmates like this?" The guards turned, their cold, calculating eyes landing on her. Then, without a word, they abandoned their victim. Dawson sneered at Cohen as they walked away. "Let the black one go. She won't last much longer anyway." Cohen chuckled darkly. "Yeah, but looks like we've got some fresh meat." Elsie had no idea she had just become their next target. In her first few days behind bars, she stayed vigilant, searching for anything unusual. But beyond the daily beatings and racial abuse, nothing stood out. Still, deep inside, she knew something much darker was lurking beneath the surface. One morning, while tending the prison garden with other inmates, Dawson and Cohen grabbed her. They dragged her into a secluded room with a large bed, locking the door behind them. Without warning, they lunged. Elsie fought back with everything she had, clawing, striking, kicking. Images of Emery, humiliated by these same men, flashed through her mind, fueling her rage. She scratched harder, aimed her blows sharper. Dawson cursed, shoving her back. "Not so tough now, huh?" Cohen grinned. They changed tactics. Elsie was thrown into another room, one with blaring speakers that kept her awake for 2 straight days. When they finally let her out, she could barely stand. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, her body and spirit shattered. The black women inmates watched her, their gazes filled with silent pity. An older woman whispered, "If you don't submit, this is what happens. Old or young, they don't care. But they prefer younger ones. And it doesn't stop here. Stay out of their way if you can." Elsie's stomach twisted. This wasn't just about violence or racism. For years, Dawson and Cohen had been tormenting the black women, violating them, breaking them. Enough. But Elsie was trapped. Every connection to the outside world?
Severed.
Calls to Marcus?
Blocked.
His visits? Denied. "She's causing trouble," Dawson lied, grinning as he barred Marcus from seeing her. Elsie realized the horrifying truth. They weren't afraid of former inmates speaking out. No one believed a black convict anyway. But fresh wounds on prisoners still inside? Those could raise questions. So, no visitors. No contact. No escape. Day by day, she grew weaker, locked in that deafening room. Whenever exhaustion took over and she dozed off, Dawson and Cohen would burst in, beating her, dousing her with cold water. Every moment was a battle, to hold on to her sanity, to keep her faith in justice. She had to survive, not just for herself, but for the truth. For Emery. For the broken women trapped in that nightmare. Just as despair threatened to consume her, news came. She was being transferred. Dawson smirked, signing the papers. "Shame we can't keep you around longer," he sneered. Cohen added, "Don't get too excited. You'll just be a toy for some other guards at the next place." Elsie's gaze was steady. "You'll pay for this. Both of you." Their laughter echoed as she left. But what they didn't know, Elsie wasn't being transferred. She was being rescued. Outside the prison gates, Marcus was waiting. The moment she saw him, Elsie ran into his arms. His voice trembled. "I was losing my mind. No word from you, nothing. But you're finally out. You're safe." Everything unraveled then. Unable to reach her, Marcus had tracked down former inmates. One of them, a woman Elsie had defended in her early days behind bars, had stepped forward, revealing everything. Her testimony, along with the evidence Marcus had gathered, secured Elsie's release. Back in her judge's robes, Elsie wasted no time. She filed charges against Dawson and Cohen. The courtroom was packed as victims came forward, recounting their torment. The evidence was overwhelming. For once, the smug guards had nothing to say. Their faces drained of color as the judge handed down the harshest sentence. But it didn't stop there. A full-scale investigation was launched, exposing years of abuse and corruption in the prison system. When it was over, Elsie stepped out of the courthouse. Marcus was there. "We did it," he said softly. She smiled, gratitude unspoken, but deeply felt. As Marcus left, Elsie remained alone by the empty street. She tilted her head back, letting the sunlight warm her face, and breathed deeply. The ache of losing Emery still lingered, but justice had been served. The justice Emery had always believed in. Because justice only exists when we're brave enough to fight for it.